I tried my hardest not to do a video on flashy Bishop Lamor Whitehead because there was just too much going on with him and his tainted image as a reputable bishop in the Lord's church. But when I read the story of a woman who it appears was swindled out of her life savings by the bishop, I had to say something. Welcome to the Charley Reed Show with your host, Charley Reed. If you haven't heard, Bishop Lamor Whitehead has been all over the news lately because his church in Canarsie, Brooklyn was robbed while live streaming recently. The video of the robbery has been all over the news and social media, and when I saw it, I was shaken up. However, from the beginning of this televised incident, I was constantly seeing comments suggesting the robbery was orchestrated by the bishop. It's almost like, let's say the video was posted at 1 o'clock, and the comments that the robbery was fake posted at 1:03. I was like, wow, can people at least allow the police to investigate before jumping to conclusions? Well, as I followed the story and all of the updates, I started to understand why people were calling the bishop out as a fraud and didn't believe the robbery was real. If I go through all of the moving parts connected to this story, this will be a documentary instead of a short video, so I will give the short version of what is happening with Bishop Lamor. When the video of the robbery began to gain traction, many vloggers on social media and the news stations began to report on it and post a live video of the robbery. And of course, hearing about a church being robbed and actually seeing the armed robbery evokes a tremendous amount of emotions in people. All three robbers had guns, and they robbed the bishop and his wife at gunpoint, taking their jewelry, which has been reported as worth either $400,000 or $1 million. So this is where the story takes even more twists and turns. On an Instagram Live, there were two people, Larry Reed and Pastor Genesis Warren, discussing the robbery, and Bishop Lamor got wind of their live and joined the conversation. In a nutshell, Bishop Lamor was highly upset about the way the two were laughing at certain things pertaining to the armed robbery and making comments about what they considered to be a cheap backdrop on the wall in the church. They questioned whether a gun was held up to the bishop's baby daughter's head. Larry also simulated the robbery and laid on the floor, acting as Bishop Lamor. And he gave a less than favorable backstory of his past dealings with the bishop and said he observed that the bishop's diamonds were cloudy and that he bought a car to compete with him and another mutual friend of theirs, amongst other things. Now, I said all of that because, to be fair, I need you to understand why the bishop joined that Instagram Live highly upset. The conversation continued and went all the way left, and the bishop said some highly offensive remarks, including homophobic and fat-shaming remarks to both Larry Reed and Pastor Genesis Warren. But I can't ignore the tremendous amount of shade thrown at him before he joined the live. However, at this point, everybody was wrong. And so far, Larry and the bishop have issued public apologies. I'm not sure about Pastor Genesis Warren. So as the investigation into the robbery that many are questioning continues, many unseemly things about the bishop have surfaced. He served time in prison for identity theft and grand larceny, and he has a case against him filed last year in the Brooklyn Supreme Court presently for allegedly stealing $90,000 from a member of his congregation, Pauline Anderson. Anderson, 56, says she gave Bishop Lamor her life savings because she wanted to buy a home, and lenders told her she would not be able to get a loan because of her credit. Bishop Lamor offered her a solution by committing to help her get a home and renovate it through his real estate company. Bishop Lamor had secured housing for a family member of hers before, so she willingly gave him the money with no contract. After realizing there had been no real effort to get her a home, she questioned the bishop, and it was blamed on his preoccupation with running for Brooklyn Borough President at the time. But eventually it appears that he changed the terms of their verbal agreement and treated her investment into her own home as a donation to his campaign. According to the New York Post, ultimately, instead of helping Anderson find a home, Whitehead used the funds as down payment on the contract to purchase a $4.4 million home for himself in Saddle River, New Jersey, the suit alleges. Anderson, who was introduced to Whitehead through her son, Rashid Anderson, in 2020, only found out about the Saddle River home after Whitehead accidentally sent an email to Rashid about the purchase, the lawsuit says. The Saddle River purchase didn't go through, but Whitehead did buy a $4.5 million apartment complex in Hartford, Connecticut, according to the city, end quote. The New York Post also says, quote, Anderson is seeking $1 million in damages for Whitehead's morally reprehensible acts and for losing her entire life savings, the filing claims. The case is still pending. Whitehead has not filed any papers in the case, nor has any lawyer appeared on his behalf, court records show, end quote. And there are so many other details and background information that I had to leave out because it's just too much. I hope if there is evidence of fraud in this case, that Pauline Anderson gets every penny of her life savings, and some if that's possible. No one likes to hear stories of preachers taking advantage of people, and these type of preachers take away from the thousands of ministers who are truly just trying to spread the gospel. Proverbs 22 and verse 1 says, A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. I'm not accusing Bishop Lamor Whitehead of being guilty of anything yet, but I can say that his reputation is very tarnished. And although he has rubbed shoulders with musical artists, media, clergymen, and politicians, it takes more than strong associations and wealth to impress God. He's looking for a pure heart and a good character. Recently, the bishop has issued about a 30-minute public statement at a press conference to discuss the robbery, his issues with some responses from the public, the state of his church following this traumatic event, his work in the community, and his credentials that he feels are being overlooked by the media and the public, and his disappointment with how he feels his situation is comparable to other church massacres and calls for changes to our gun laws in New York State. Here is a short audio clip of Bishop Lamor Whitehead's press conference. I will not give any further commentary after the audio clip because I can't take it anymore.
Because all the media started to plaster me not as a bishop, but as a black man that was convicted, that has a felony, and nobody else wanted to talk about what Bishop Whitehead has done. So nobody wanted to talk about that the young man turned himself in and surrendered. Everybody wanted to talk about the bling bling bishop that the media portrayed. And then they wanted to go, oh, he was convicted for scheme to defraud, grand larceny. And then, as a black man, they always bring up our past. They always bring up our past. But they don't want to say that Bishop Whitehead was illegally convicted. They don't want to say that they forged search warrants in order to convict me. They don't want to talk about how they hid all the evidence and lied to my attorneys to convict me. But everybody wants to talk about that I went to prison. Typical black man. Let's talk about my father, Arthur Miller, who was killed when I was 6 weeks old, beat and strangled to death by 16 police officers by the 77th precinct. And I had to grow up without a father. I didn't have nobody to teach me how to be a man because of the color of my father's skin. But yet, my church, nobody can empathize or sympathize with us. You want to know why? Because you're plastering their pastor, his past. And nobody wants to talk about these three men that came into this church and violated us. We are a house of worship. It doesn't matter if we're black, brown, white, Asian. It doesn't matter. Why are we missing the point? Why isn't it enough media talking about what happened to my church? My wife has not stopped crying. My daughter has not stopped crying yet. My members have not stopped crying yet. Nobody's empathizing with my church. They don't even want to come to church no more. I was on the phone with one of my preachers. She said, Bishop, I'm scared to answer the phone. It just brings so much anxiety. They're beating up on you, Bishop. What are we supposed to do? I'm a black man in America. Every time I get in my car, I don't know if I'm gonna come home because we die for less. So today, I want to bring our attention to a few points, and then I'm going to open it for questions. Everybody is setting a narrative that all of this, it was $1 million, it was 400,000, all that's garbage. Nobody can quote that I said any of that. But to sell newspapers and to sell media, y'all put whatever number you want on its face. And I don't get the opportunity to defend myself. $1 million worth of jewelry, you know, all the tabloids. Why would a pastor have that? What about his congregation? And then you posterize if I wear a Fendi suit or Gucci suit. Why is Fendi, Louis, and Gucci, why can't we wear that in the church?
Bloopers. They questioned whether a gun was held up to the baby bishop's daughter's head. What? Whitehead used the funds as down payment on the contract to purchase a $4.4 billion home for himself. Billion? Okay.